You're listening to Community Voice PHL, an award-winning talk show that informs, engages, and inspires. Hello, and once again, thanks for tuning in to Community Voice PHL Talk Show. Community Voice is a show that inspires people who are building, caring, and prospering community all across the nation. We'll have engaging interviews with inspiring people who will get you involved with making sure that you make a difference wherever you're at. And we're excited, as always, to be on the airways with you on WPPM LP 106.5 Philly Cam. And I got my man, the ingenious Nick, on the show with me. Nick, how's it going, my brother?
Amazing as always, my brother. Great to be here. Excited for a new enlightening conversation.
That's what's up. That's what's up. So as always, we want to start off with something that's, informing about what's happening in the area so that you can be able to, know how you can take part and get engaged. April is National Reentry Month. And we want to always highlight this month because there's various individuals who we know across the nation and even some of our families who've been impacted by the criminal justice system. They've coming back into society. They're looking forward to making their lives prosperous and regaining a pathway to success. So throughout this whole month of April, there's going to be various different organizations and individuals who are going to be supporting those who've come back from being incarcerated to help support them, whether it's, again, with employment opportunities, whether it's with just mentorship, professional development, or whatever it would be to help those who have been impacted by the justice system as they come back home to regain a pathway to success. So with April being National Reentry Month, just keep that in mind. If you're looking for some organizations to support or some work to be done on your volunteer level time that you would have to offer, think about offering that to some of these organizations who are doing work for reentry citizens during the Reentry Month. There's more about that you can find on the Philadelphia government website, philly.gov, their website. A lot of organizations that are doing this work in the reentry space. And again, I highly recommend that you look up that website, plug into one of those organizations that's in your neighborhood and begin to support those who have, come home after they've served their time. Because, it's really important to allow for them to be able to be planted back into a pathway of prosperity. Because oftentimes those who've been impacted by the justice system, they wear sometimes like a scarlet letter, like the world would say, right? But we want to remove that stigma and let them know that they have support. So this month, and even not just throughout this month, because this is one of the things, Nick, that's always kind of funny, not in a humorous way. We'll have a month theme, right? As if this is the only month we get to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. But it's not. It's just a month we're aware of it, bring it to notoriety. But I say that to say that don't just think that this is an opportunity just once this month. And like last month was Women's History Month. Let's not forget women all throughout the year, right? February was Black History Month. Let's not forget Black history all throughout the year. So let's not forget what we can do for individuals who've been impacted by the criminal justice system all throughout the year, but also just be mindful to highlight it this month and be able to support those organizations that's out there doing that work. So continue to keep that in mind. And also, it's now officially spring. I mean, the weather is kind of spring-ish, is trying to push through with the spring thing. Can't wait till it be a consistent 65, 70-degree days. But, spring is doing what it's doing. So it's actually springtime. And with it being springtime, one of the things I always encourage people to do is go to the art museum and check out not just the art inside the building, but the beautiful surroundings that is out there. Be in touch with, nature, the environment, and the artistic nature of the city of Philadelphia in and of itself. And if you don't live in Philly, I'm sure there's a art museum or a park that you can go to and just, unplug and breathe some fresh air around some trees and some grass. Because if any of you have work where you get really stressed out at, being in that environment, I could almost guarantee, Nick, that it's going to give a breath of fresh air to their life, and they can be able to see things different, feel things different, move and navigate in a different way. What you think about that, good brother?
Jeff, you just called me out. I've lived in Philly for over 2 decades, and as an adult, I have not been to the art museum.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah, I've been in the area. I've sat outside and looked at some of the architecture that you spoke about, but yeah, I never went inside as an adult yet.
Oh, man.
I gotta re-experience that, especially as a creative person. I feel like I'm robbing myself of that a little bit, so I'm a bit exposed right now.
Yeah, man, get on out there, man, and take a. I think there is certain days where, and I don't want to like be all in their business, but there's certain days where the cost of the tickets aren't expensive. I think it's maybe some weekend, second Saturdays or something like that. But whatever it is, Nick, go on that website, man, check it out, man, and go in there and just browse through. Man. It was one weekend, me and my wife went, and they had like a DJ cafe, and I
Mm.
forget whether it was like the third weekend, fourth weekend, whatever it was. But the person who was the DJ, and I forget the DJ's name, so forgive me about that, DJ dude. Um, but he was like, they do this all the time. And again, I forget what day it was, but I say that, Nick, to say, man, go out there one of them days, man, because you will have a great time. It was nice
Yeah.
cafe in the foyer, and they had art all around. So, man, yeah, Nick, get out there, bruh.
Listen, you
Get out.
might have gave me a date idea for this weekend. Thank you.
Oh, for sure, man, for sure. You're gonna love it, man. You're gonna be plugged in because like I was saying, it's not just about the art, even though, of course, it's the art museum. You want to take in the creative nature of those who want to share their skills on the
Right.
exhibit. But it's just the environment, man. I'm all with the vibe of the environment, man. Changing your energy and changing your spiritual approach and perspective. So, yeah, man, if that's a date idea for you, Nick, go ahead and do it.
There we go.
Go ahead and do it. You got to give a report too. You got to give a report on that. So that's cool. So one of the things we wanted to talk about on this show was previously last month. Many of you may have tuned in to the episode where we had Dr. Kristi Johnson and Reverend Leroy Miles talking about know your numbers for men and women. And if you were listening to that show, you probably heard it sound something like one of those cell phone commercials. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? And it really got, choppy and messy, if you will, through the technical challenges that we had. We are going to invite them to come back on so that they can share the follow-up information from those great events, because the Know Your Numbers event for women took place in March. They had a great week-long conference too. They had a Say Yes conference at Enon Tabernacle Baptist Church, and culminating at that conference was their Know Your Numbers event, where the women got to understand their health perspective, all their numbers, and everything regarding women's health and maternity wellness and all that great stuff. And again, we were inviting Dr. Johnson and Reverend Miles back on to talk about that event. And in this month in April, the men are going to have their Know Your Numbers event as well. So again, we're going to bring them back because we believe and we understand the importance of mental health and wellness and physical fitness and wellness at the same time. So knowing your numbers is important. And it's not just to know your numbers so that you can know them. It's know your numbers so that you can do something about that useful information. Because I shared the last episode when we did have both of those guests on, the difference it made for me personally, right? Because I consider myself, a healthy guy. I work out, I eat healthy and all that good stuff. But I went to the doctor, and my cholesterol numbers was high, and I was like, whoa, and here I am, feeling, looking healthy, but yet, my cholesterol levels were high, and I was not diabetic, right? But it was pre-diabetic. So it was one of those things where if I hadn't had my normal annual checkup, knowing my numbers, and just felt healthy and foregoing all that, I might have went past the pre-diabetic stage to the actual diabetic stage, right? So that's why it's important to know your numbers and to do something about it. And for me personally, to do something was, I didn't amp up my fitness like now I'm a fitness junkie, but I was, able to understand how to make changes in my diet, how to understand how to, do things differently with my workout regimens, and be mindful of how I can lower my cholesterol numbers because I know what they are now, right? As opposed to just feeling healthy. Because Nick, what happens is that there's a lot of people out there who are just feeling healthy, feeling fine, and even looking physically fit and all that good stuff. But as you know, man, in the space of, mindfulness and wellness that you deal with, it's a lot different from just how you look and how you feel to how you really are. Talk about that a little bit, Nick.
Yeah, for sure. You can, like you said, you can have underlying problems and not even realize it.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up one day and you're like, I'm feeling fine, but you go get checked out. The doctor tell you something different. But you actually touched on something that I want to bring up. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, and Jeff, I ain't trying to call you out, but you're a little older. So you can speak to this part of the community where I can't, but I hear a lot of elders in our community that have a lack of trust in the medical industry. So what do you think about that? Like, how do we get ourselves into those spaces where we may not be necessarily comfortable with the practices that are going on, or we may be afraid of finding out something that we don't want to hear because, like you said, we think we're already good.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that out. It's not necessarily a call out, bro, but I appreciate that respect. Because I already shared in the episode, there's an gap here between both.
Absolutely.
So they know that. But yeah, that's a great point. What I think, right, because I'm not, a medical professional and I don't want to give off any inference that I am, but what I think from my experience in talking with elders and dealing with people in the community is it's one, the cost of it all, right?
Mm,
It's hey, I know I might not even not be feeling too well, but one, I may not have the insurance coverage, right? And two, if I do have insurance coverage, they may not cover all of it. So now we're going through that level of, can I afford to go to the doctor? That's one thing,
hmm
that people often look at, especially, seniors who are on what they would call a fixed income or, a non-increasing income. They think like, if I go to the doctor and charge me X amount, then it throws my whole lifestyle off in that regard. So I believe that that's one thing, right, Nick?
hmm
And again, I don't think that's like say from an expert level. We can bring an expert on and actually answer that because that is an awesome question. But I think as you asked me, I think that's what it is, where they feel the financial burden of going to the doctors. And then another thing is that it's just a lot of misinformation out there, right? Um, and sometimes I believe in holistic medicine. So what I'm about to say is not against that. So I believe in holistic medicine, holistic approach. But sometimes there are a lot of home remedies and home, medicines that folk think they could take that could deal with some of the ailments that are really serious, right?
hmm
So you get that combination with, okay, I can't afford a doctor, but my grandmama and them said my mama and them did this and it helped them out. Now, again, nothing against that. It could have some benefits, but it could also slow down or impede any level of support or help that they really need. So they got the lack of support, lack of funds financially, not necessarily misinformation, but home remedies about what, can help them in that space. And then it's just the fear of the fact that, I might actually have something that I don't want to deal with. You know what I mean? Like, because whenever, I don't want to say whenever, sometimes when people get ailments, their mind races to the worst of whatever that
The
ailment is.
extreme, yeah.
Yeah, the extreme, right? So it's not like, oh, I got to sneeze. I might got a cold. Nowadays, you got to sneeze, you got COVID. you, know, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
you sneeze 2 or 3 times, people putting on masks, rightfully so, but you get what I'm saying, right? So our mind always goes to the extreme, and that extreme causes fear and trauma. So the other thing, the final thing I think to answer your question, Nick, is that is part of it too. The fear of like, I don't want to go to the doctor and tell me I got such and such and whatnot. And now I gotta deal with that. I gotta face that. And then it goes back to the first one, because if I
hmm
do got something serious, can I afford to get the cure?
Right.
So I think those are some of the challenges that our seniors are facing. And to your point, that's a great question. So I'm going to bookmark that, and I'm going to have some seniors come on so we could talk about that, not just the health perspective, but just their perspective in life. Because I think, just as much as we need to hear the youth perspective, we need to hear, your generation, Nick, and then we need to hear the seniors pour into us on all different levels. So I definitely want to have them at least address that question when we bring them on. But that's some good stuff, man. What else you got, my brother?
Yeah, that would be great. All perspectives are valid, especially
Yeah.
I know the younger generation kind of gets the butt of it because it's like,
Hmm.
oh man, y'all young, y'all don't know nothing, so I don't want to really necessarily hear what you got to say, but
Hmm.
they still have their valid points as well. But one thing you brought up that was interesting was about the diagnosis part of it.
Hmm.
And I noticed a lot of us self-diagnose too.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
might, I'll take the example of sneezing.
Hmm.
Oh no, it's the worst thing ever.
Hmm.
But in reality, it's like you kind of programming yourself with that. So what do you think on really like thoughts making you sick? Like identifying with something that may not even be there before
Mm.
you even get checked out.
So it's like the psychosomatic illnesses, right? Where
Yeah.
you believe you got something, so therefore you're gonna feel like that, whatever that is. And then
Yes.
here's another thing, right? Google can be it can be helpful and scary at the same time, right? So you get you sneeze or a little bump on your hand or a rash or whatever. You look it up in Google and it's like, oh, you got such and such a fasciitis. Like, oh my
Uh-huh.
God. Oh my God.
Now you calling out of work.
Yeah,
You
right.
don't want to do nothing.
We're not laughing at the situation. We're just saying this in a way that can make it lighthearted to understand that those are ways that sometimes, again, for as great as our research can be, because I do believe we do need to research things and not take some things at face surface and what others tell us straightforwardly. But to answer your question, Nick, I think that's part of the challenge too. When we do the self-diagnosis and you do the self-MD search, you know what I mean? You go to all these searches and say, oh, okay, I got such and such cephalitis on my hand, and that's why this bruise is here, and then that's why my elbow not working, and then that's why my arm's sore too. All the while, it's that now you're making yourself sick. It's that psychosomatic illnesses that often go into play. And what happens sometimes, my mom, God bless Mary, she was a nurse at Temple. She retired. She's living with my sister now. And she used to tell me when people come in with stuff like that, they would check them out and they'd be like, yo, Mr. Best, really nothing wrong with you. And you'd be like, no, this hurt. Give me something for it. And they give him, you heard it before, probably they give him a placebo. And he take it like, oh yeah, this is helping. This making me feel better. Yeah, nah, it's all in your head. So, not minimizing how some things can really be serious, but also that psychosomatic portion of how when we, like you said, self-medicate, and then we begin to start to self-MD ourselves with searches on Google and even asking our friends and, the uninformed information from our friends and colleagues that can really lead us down that wandering path. I just think, we need to have these conversations so that we can stay informed and understand, one, as you mentioned about your initial question, one, the fear and the cost of medications. It's a serious issue, right? Some prescriptions are just, outrageously priced, right? And it is definitely for the seniors, but it's for, people your age, my age as well. Thank God, we're both in a good portion of health, and pray that we continue in that space. But if any of us were to get, any type of illness that regarded medication, and we don't have insurance coverage, it can be a change in your financial status a little bit, So that's one thing about, again, healthcare in the United States. Not getting on my political soapbox, but that's one thing about healthcare in the United States that has to be looked at. How can we keep the cost affordable? And keeping that cost affordable, keep people healthy, keep them working, keep them living a longer, productive life. So, yeah, man, I think those are some of the challenges that's out there, Nick.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of it is waiting until you get sick and then we deal with it from there instead of preventing it. So it's like, all right, now I get to sell you something.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like, what's really missing from this industry where, it just feels like there's no trust.
Yeah, so it's an expression. I don't know where it really originated from, but I heard it when I was doing work with one organization with social justice reform, and the expression goes: there's more money in the treatment than it is the cure, and that goes the same for like medicine, right? There's more money in the treatment than it is to cure, and so say for example, someone was to come out with a great medicine or whatever to cure cancer. That will alleviate all that money that people are pouring into treating people with cancer. So who do you think they're going to fund more in the space of how, capitalistic, how oligarchic our country is, and maybe even the world? It's more money in the treatment. So it's better for them to keep sending Jeff and Nick to the Cancer Research Center, to this research center, to that research center, and we'll feel better from time to time and may even extend our life to a great deal. But the money that needs to be put in place is in the cure, but it's really not. So that's where that comes in, and Nick, is more money in the treatment than it is a cure. So they make more money treating people than they do trying to really put money into the cure. Because if they put money into the cure, then that's a whole nother business structure, whole nother market industry that may be not necessarily displaced, but have to restructure what they're doing because it's no more treatment. Everybody's cured. So going back to your question, though, I think that's part of why we should be preventive in spaces of having our annual checkups, right? Having our conversations with our physicians, OBGYNs, and healthcare professionals. Because again, using myself as an example, had I just thought that I was healthy based on how I felt, again, I might have went over because I'm pre-diabetic now. Had I been going how I felt, I would have went to the diabetic stage. But the prevention of that was my appointment at my doctor, right? So that's part of why we got to think, how can we be preventive? And again, to the work that you're doing in the mental wellness and the yoga and the centering, the mindfulness, that's part of preventive work too, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so those are things I think can really help us to be ahead of these things. Now, there's some things that are genetic, right? So there's some things that will come from one family to another based on their genetic and biological makeup that can't really be, if you will, prevented. They can be mitigated, but those who can prevent some of those things, like the foods we eat, the things we drink, the amount of sleep that we get, all of that goes into that preventive space, Nick, where I think can really help us in the space of being better to ourselves and our health in that capacity, man.
Absolutely. I've been watching a show recently. It's I don't want to plug it too much, but it's called Common Side Effects, and it's exactly what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Without spoiling, there's a guy who stumbles upon a miracle drug. It's not really a drug, but more so a herb,
Mm-hmm.
like a mushroom. And this
Mm-hmm.
mushroom cures all diseases.
Mm.
But you know what happens when you put something like that out?
Yeah,
Big Pharma comes after him.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
that battle between the two sides of, wait a
yeah.
minute, if this guy is putting this thing out there that's curing everybody, we can't
Mm-hmm.
have that because we can't continue to profit off the illnesses.
Exactly.
Another funny thing too, I was just talking to my girl recently, and
Mm-hmm.
she said that she had a toothache
Mm-hmm.
and mentioned how she wanted to get back to oil pulling using coconut oil.
Yeah.
And I said, interesting. How come the dentist never mentioned that to you? And she said, well, because if they did, they would be out of business.
Yeah, 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 yeah. See, that's what I'm saying. It's all in the treatment. And again, nothing against our medical professionals, because again, we're going to have Dr. Kristi Johnson on, who's also a medical professional, and there's a lot of medical professionals who are doing some wonderful things. But that's where the rub and the balance comes in at, where those who are really not understanding how to promote preventive care, as you mentioned from your girl who's doing the things that dentists don't tell them to do, you know then it's not going to tell you that. Because also I went to my physician, again, won't call his name out for respecting it. I was sharing with him some of the things I was doing. He was like, nah, I really can't endorse that.
Hmm.
And the reason why he said that was because, one, some of the things that we do on a holistic level aren't medically tested, right?
Right.
So they can't support it from that level. So I wanted to share that story because there are some physicians who may not mention it because they can't really ethically, from their profession, support it. They can't say, go around, Jeff, and drink beet juice all the time and you'll be healthy. They can't say that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Even though they may know, and I'm just using beet juice as an example, even though they may know that beet juice can do that thing, but from their medical profession, they have a liability, an ethical clause that they can't promote things that haven't been medically tested. So that's kind of the rub. But some of them just won't mention it because of the simple fact they're getting their pockets, filled by the prescriptions that they write and the medicines that they send out and all that other stuff. So, it's like I say, man, it's that tricky balance of how do we get around that so that we can be better in those spaces of preventive care, while at the same time working with our healthcare providers to be able to assist us to really be healthy and not always be symptomatic of something that they got a cure for or got medicines for. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think too, lot of this is not even a lot. I would say all of it is science. And if you
Yeah.
know anything about science, it's always changing. We're always finding new information.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things that may have worked in, the past,
Mm-hmm.
we say, oh, wait a minute, this is unethical or it doesn't work for our bodies because we've evolved so much.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of times you got to do your own research as well. So it's not to say don't listen to your physicians or healthcare, but check in with your own research as well and really
Yeah.
find out what works for you and your body. And don't be afraid to get a second opinion.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the truth. And I know I mentioned, Google can be scary, but adding to your point, you hit on what I was referring to as well. Google can be scary, but it also can be helpful in that fact as well. Do your own research, and make sure you get all the information that you need and get that second opinion. For anytime you go to a doctor for an extended period, you build that relationship and you build that trust. But that doesn't mean you still can't go to somebody else and be like, yo, my primary care said such and such, what you think, and a good primary care physician, I want to dare to say, should tell you too, to do that. Like, all right, this
That
is what I
part.
think, this is what I believe, but go check out with somebody else, you know, and because that other person may see something, may realize something that may be different. Now you can have a conversation with your primary care and the other referred doctor or physician. And that's where the knowledge comes in. And then you do your research. And then that's how that conversation builds onto, true health care for self-care at the same time, man.
Healthcare for self-care. You might have just made a t-shirt for somebody right there.
Go ahead, rock with it, man. Rock with it. Rock with it. That's what's up. That's what's up. Look, man, we about to close out on this show right now, man. So any last trailing thoughts? I know we got into a good conversation about health and wellness and the space that we need to be with our physicians, with ourselves, and the way we can find paths for healing. Anything you got to share with the audience and anything you got coming up personally that, you would like them to help support you with, good brother?
Yeah, closing thoughts, I would say, yeah, I really want to touch home on that, not being afraid to go get looked at, not being afraid to get checked out, even if you may, have your gripes about what's going on. But it's important to know. You might feel good, you might look good, but make sure you're good. And I'll leave it there.
There you go. And that's a great place to leave it. Make sure that you're good. So we want to thank you again for tuning in to Community Voice PHL Talk show that informs, engages, and inspires. And if you're listening to us for the first time, we want to, of course, thank you. And if you want to follow us, we mostly land on Instagram, which is at Community Voice PHL. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Community Voice PHL Talk Show, and our Apple Podcast, Community PHL Talk Show as well. If you have any comments about this episode or any of the other previous episodes you would check out, please send us an email to communityvoicephl@gmail.com. And always make sure that you follow us as we continue to do the great work in the community, because this upcoming summer, me and Ingenious Nick will be hitting the road. We'll be coming to a neighborhood near you, doing some live broadcasts, and we'll be featuring some of the great, amazing work that's happening in your community, and even from yourself if you're out there, one of those individuals doing that work. So be mindful to plug into us. Again, send us an email, communityvoicephl@gmail.com. And you can follow Ingenious Nick. Give me your Instagram handle, Nick.
At Ingenious Nick.
There you go, at Ingenious Nick. Easy way to find him, easy way to catch up to him and get all the inspiring information and great work that he's doing. But hey, just remember, never give up on your try. One of the things that often have people fail to be successful is they give up on their try. Not that they quit, but they just don't try as much as they should. So never give up on your try, because your next try could be your triumph. So thanks again for listening to Community Voice PHL. And remember, if it's happening in your community, we need to hear your voice. Peace, and we are out.
Peace.